Coming up on Network Africa. South African military deploys over 10,000 troops to help with floods relief and rescue operations in KwaZulu-Natal. United Nations calls for urgent funding as Somalia faces its most severe drought in over 3 decades. UK Home Secretary hits back at critics of the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Hello and welcome, and a happy Easter to you. I'm Teniola Shobowale. We begin the program in South Africa, where the military says it's deploying more than 10,000 troops to help with relief and rescue operations following the devastating floods that swept through parts of KwaZulu-Natal province last week. More than 440 people have died, and the search is continuing for 63 people who are still missing. Some of them were swept away by swollen rivers and mudslides. The government has declared KwaZulu-Natal a disaster area.
Rescuers searched for dozens of people still missing in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province over the weekend. In a semi-rural area of Durban, 3 members of the Sibiya family were killed when the walls of the room where they slept collapsed. In the Durban area of Marine Hill, police used sniffer dogs to search through debris, and a military helicopter was deployed to help the rescue mission. Province's Premier, Shinle Zikalala, says the death toll has risen to 443, with a further 63 people unaccounted for. The floods have left thousands homeless, knocked out power and water services, and disrupted operations at one of Africa's busiest ports, Durban.
House been washed away very bad. People in the neighbor's house were buried in the sand. After digging the sand, they found them dead inside. And also a lot of accidents, plenty of accidents. It's a very, very sad thing. Big disaster. Roads are damaged, you can't come to work. You have to make alternative ways. Very bad, very bad.
The flood has affected our lives. Even in my home, the water came inside the house and the furniture, everything inside, that's broken by the floods. Yeah, we can't even go well on the road because the other bridges that's fallen down, and the way to go with the taxi is not available now to go. We have to change the way we're going.
A provincial economic official estimated the overall infrastructure damage at more than 10 billion rands. President Cyril Ramaphosa's office said late on Saturday he had delayed a working visit to Saudi Arabia to focus on the disaster. The rainfall in the region has since eased, but the amount of rain which fell last Monday was equal to about 75% of South Africa's average annual precipitation. Climate change activists are calling for investments to help communities around the world better prepare for worsening weather, as Africa's southeastern coast is expected to see more violent storms and floods in the coming decades.
Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia is in KwaZulu-Natal. She joins us now for more. Betty, search and rescue operations continued over the weekend, and now the military has deployed troops to the region. Speak to us about that.
Yes, search and rescue efforts have continued so far, about 185. In most cases, we were with one of the crews in a place, one of the districts affected. So they're following the paths of the river, the major rivers in the area where many people would have washed off to. So that is continuing. I'm sure you must have heard that 1 or 2 of the search and rescue operatives died. One was experiencing difficulty breathing, as well as a canine, that's one of the police dogs as well, drowned while trying to search for bodies. So that is continuing. We understand over 60 people are still missing, We're not yet sure. Many people believe the extent of the mud is quite a lot. So many people believe that their loved ones are still buried. And in South Africa, they do not joke with the bodies of their loved ones. That's the only way they get closure. So the police minister, Becky Cele, said, okay, we've suffered some tragedy as well. I mean, regarding the search and rescue operatives, but we have to continue with the efforts to find the bodies of loved ones, and maybe a miracle could happen, a happy ending could still happen. But as the days go by, it's becoming difficult to say that could happen.
And Betty, it's quite sad really that as, people search for their loved ones, many people have also been left homeless as a result of this. What help is being provided to the victims?
Some are being sheltered by those who have not been affected. A place called Mzinyati, where we went to, a family of six, 4 children, yes, a family of 6, their house just went down like a pack of cards. So the neighbors who are higher up the hill is sheltering them. Then some schools have been used to shelter some people, but now I understand the authorities will be moving them to community halls. It's difficult. It's a really difficult setting, just seeing people when you're used to your own space. But that's what can be done at the moment. But the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Sihle Zigalala, has said that from tomorrow, the MEC, that's a member of the executive committee, will be going around with a team to look for possible land for relocation of some people. Maybe they start rebuilding their homes from areas like that, but that will happen from Tuesday. That's tomorrow. But generally, it's sad. Some have moved up to relatives who are not in affected areas as well. But government is doing, and their private efforts. We've heard donations. We have the charity organization, Gift of the Givers, present in some of the districts. And people have been donating to organizations like that. There is another group from as far as Johannesburg, trying to raise money and raise resources, raise food for people, one called the Midnight Train to KwaZulu-Natal. So private efforts are ongoing. Government is doing, it's doing its own bit as well. And this evening, or this night, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be addressing the nation to give more details on what is being done and what more will be done for the people who have been affected. It's not just in KwaZulu-Natal, mind you. There's also Eastern Cape and some other provinces, but the devastation is much more here, in KwaZulu-Natal.
And Betty, in terms of recovery, getting electricity back, water, and also fixing roads, any news on that?
Some of the areas we went to, you have technicians all around. Part of this is what the SANDF as well will be doing. We'll be joining the other organizations that are going to do this. There will be technicians. Mind you, hospitals were affected, schools were affected, roads were affected. So some places we were, as a Saturday, you had technicians around trying to at least fix roads enough for people to pass through. Some are just crossing the river on stepping stones, and which is still dangerous, fast-flowing river, and you miss a step, you're inside, and you could be washed away. So their efforts still being worked out. I know that coordination or synchronizing all the different efforts may be a challenge, but it's something that has to be done in order to get people to start moving on bit by bit. It's going to be difficult for everyone, especially for those who lost so many members of their families as well.
All right then, Betty, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
And over in Somalia, the country is facing its most severe drought in over 3 decades, with more than half of the population in dire need of food and water. The United Nations said earlier this month that parts of the country could soon plunge into famine. It estimates 7.7 million people, or more than half of the population, are facing severe hunger or starvation this year.
children, and a constant call for help has become the norm in Somalia as a severe drought ravages the Horn of Africa nation. Located in the southern federal member state of Jubaland, Dalo has been hard hit by Somalia's current wave of drought. 3 IDP camps have sprung up since November 2021 alone due to an influx of newly arrived IDPs. With close to 3 million people already internally displaced by previous droughts and conflicts, Somalia is now forced to contend with more displacements amid shrinking donor aid to redeem the situation.
The resources are not anywhere near enough. Everywhere you go, look at these people behind me. All of them are new arrivals. 400 families arrived in the past 2 weeks alone in this single IDP camp. And there are many around Dolo.
The country is facing the risk of famine as a combination of poor rainfall, skyrocketing food prices, and huge funding shortfalls, leaving almost 40% of Somalis, around 6 million people, facing critical levels of food insecurity.
We cannot really overemphasize the fact that the drought situation is getting worse, and we're actually moving from a drought response now into a prevention of famine. So it is getting more intense, it is getting more severe, it's getting more acute. And of course, all of the indicators are that this situation will get a little bit more severe because, one, we are expecting probably the 4th failed rain season.
Children under 5 are amongst the most vulnerable as the drought worsens and access to food and milk is very scarce. According to the UN, around 1.4 million children face acute malnutrition through the end of this year, with around a quarter of them, or 330,000 children, facing severe acute malnutrition.
Funding's everything. I mean, we have the expertise, we have the people, we have the communities who do it for themselves, but what they need are the supplies. So the money is for the supplies. It's for plum peanut, it's for, in severe cases, special milk for severely malnourished. You need the chlorine tablets. You need to truck the water. You need all of those things. We need recreation kits for children. They need to play. They need to have a childhood.
The war in Ukraine is also having an impact on the situation in Somalia. Previously, up to 85% of Somalia's wheat imports came from Russia and Ukraine. That has stopped, leading to price increases of 160% in just 1 month.
I know that the world is very much occupied by Ukraine, but human suffering is human suffering, no matter whether in Europe or Asia or Africa. And here we have to uplift, to live to our moral values. And our moral values, humanity matters. If we are not responding now, and we are not increase our response, those people will be heading to famine. And that is not acceptable.
Weather forecasts are predicting an average to below average rainy season for Somalia. More than 80% of the country has remained generally dry, and water and staple food prices have experienced dramatic price hikes. The United Nations says if the funding gap is not urgently addressed, it will contribute to worse outcomes with the real risk of widespread famine. The last time such a humanitarian tragedy struck Somalia was in 2011, when famine conditions killed 250,000 people.
There's still to come on the program. Green entrepreneurs learn sustainable farming at West Africa's Agro Boot Camp. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. British Home Secretary Priti Patel has hit back at critics of the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, saying they have failed to offer solutions. Writing in the Times with the Rwandan Foreign Minister, she said they had proposed an innovative answer to the deadly trade of people smuggling. The comments come after Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said there were serious ethical questions about the plan.
You've been living with me this week.
Why there are such serious ethical questions about sending asylum seekers overseas. The details are for politics and politicians. The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot. It cannot carry the weight of resurrection justice. It cannot carry the weight of life conquering death. It cannot carry the weight of the resurrection that was revealed first to the least valued, for as a policy it privileges the rich and the strong. And it cannot carry the weight of our national responsibility as a country formed by Christian values, because subcontracting out our responsibilities, even to a country that seeks to do well, like Rwanda, is the opposite of the nature of God, who himself took responsibility for our failures.
As South Sudan struggles for peace, it's still cleaning up the deadly threat posed by thousands of landmines from previous conflicts decades ago. In Upper Nile and the extreme north of Jonglei states, the United Nations Mine Action Service has carried out a mine risk awareness session to educate vulnerable communities who are living under the threat of anti-personnel mines.
Are you coming? Yeah, I have experience.
We are here today to seek if we are able to deploy our team finally to support these people and to clear the land where are anti-personnel mines. Once we clear the land, people will be able to plant some plants, to grow plants and to have some kind of food. Otherwise, the rest of the land here is flooded all the year, and this is the only area which is suitable for them.
So right now, we're really in solutions mode to try and figure out how we can get here and help these tremendously resilient people to get on with their lives and livelihoods, and also to bring back the message, the very clear message that the Commissioner, the Executive Director and the Chief and the County Coordinator said about the needs here are bigger. Mines are only one part of that need. It's food, protection, medical, access. UNMAS is part of the UNMISS mission here in South Sudan, so we coordinate with all of the other partners as well, the NGOs, civil society and the heads of the mission to integrate into returnees, all the different areas, protection and so on, that support the people of South.
Now moving on, as West Africa faces its worst food crisis on record, driven by conflict and drought, according to aid agencies, there's a greater need for training in the region. To address this, Agro Boot Camp is a training camp teaching farmers sustainable agriculture with a dose of exercise. Take a look.
In the early morning light of rural Benin Republic, trainees are doing jumping jacks. But this boot camp isn't for fitness fanatics or the military. It's for aspiring farmers. This is the 7th edition of the Agro Boot Camp. It's an intensive week-long course aimed at teaching the next generation sustainable farming techniques. But not before some early morning fitness led by instructor Bamidele Laduru.
For agricultural practice, it is very important to be in good shape. And to be in good shape means it's necessary to exercise. And here, it's important to enlighten the spirit as well as the body.
West Africa is facing its worst food crisis on record, driven by, according to aid agencies, conflict and drought. That makes the training in the town of Toribosito more relevant than ever. The concept for the boot camp came from Beninese Nigerian Ngo Les Jetons de l'Espoir. It teaches agricultural practices that work with nature and without the use of chemicals. Among the 21 participants is Congolese palm wine maker Jean-Paul Mangata. He's keen to take what he learned back to Kinshasa.
La raison majeure qui m'a motivé à participer.
It's a pleasure because you know that your production model is oriented towards a production model that will help with the planet's survival rather than be an element towards destroying the planet.
His business produces around 60 liters of palm wine and 37.5 liters of fruit fermented wine per trimester. Thanks to the boot camp, he plans to enrich his soil with a combination of different organic techniques. But he says what was most valuable was the connections he made with other agroecologists from across West Africa.
Being divided into groups from different countries allowed us to develop a relationship that is even beyond the training that we learned.
So, while violence has been a driving factor of food insecurity in the region, it's friendship, at least in some small part, that's helping farmers like Mangata thrive.
And over in Kenya, Samuel Rigu has found a way of turning agricultural waste into an organic fertilizer that retails at less than half the price of its inorganic alternative. His customers and scientists say it's also more effective and kinder to the soil. Rigu says the demand for organic fertilizers has spiked since the onset of the Ukraine crisis, prompting him to double the size of his team to double the output before the conflict started.
Samuel Rigu is coy about the secret potion he adds to his fertilizer, revealing only that the brown liquid is called Safi Proprietary Enhancement Formula. The Kenyan, who runs a processing plant in Mwea, central Kenya, is less shy about the results, turning agricultural waste into organic fertilizer, which is cheaper than non-organic alternatives. Globally, there's renewed interest in organic fertilizer as global prices for chemical inputs skyrocketed because of the war in Ukraine. For now, Rigu's target market is smallholder farmers who have been using synthetic fertilizers for years.
Target smallholder farmers. These are farmers who, over the long time, they have seen their yields decrease, despite the fact that they're using synthetic fertilizer year in, year out. And what has happened actually is that their soils have been slightly turning to acidic. So, and when these soils become acidic, they become infertile. So we are here to rejuvenate that or reverse that. Waste is readily available across different farming communities and farming villages, not only in Kenya, but globally. So, and our work is to convert this waste into a high-yielding fertilizer.
It takes several stages to repurpose the rice husk into Rigu's organic fertilizer. First, his team sets fire to mounds of rice husk, letting them smolder for around 8 hours. When the carbonized husk, known as biochar, have cooled, the team adds the mystery enhancement formula, mixing and turning the black substance until the right level of moisture is achieved. Biochar, such as Rigu's, not only adds nutrients to the soil, but has many other benefits.
Our research shows that soil that has higher organic matter content has multiple benefits. For example, the water holding capacity is higher. The nutrient exchange sites have increased, so it makes more nutrients available to the plants. Also, we know that soil that has more organic matter has better soil aggregation and is less prone to erosion. And as we know, in these times of erratic climate or more intense rainfall events, we really need soil that's well held together. For example, organic matter binding the soil particles together, but also storing water.
For Rigu, this translates into happy customers like local tomato farmer David Murungi.
My harvest has improved. This organic fertilizer is okay, and in my opinion, it has up to 3 benefits. First, it's organic and enriches the soil, but also it plays a role in reducing acidity in soil. From what I see, my crops are growing well, and during harvest, my fruits are even bigger than before.
Rigu says he decided to enter the fertilizer business in 2013 when he saw mountains of rice husks being burnt, polluting the environment and contributing to greenhouse gas emissions.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shabuali.